Okay, welcome to Gedling Borough February 2024 Planning Committee. So let's just move straight to agenda item 1. Do we have any apologies for absences or substitutes? Councillor Rachel Ellis.
Yes, thank you. Apologies from Councillor Linda Pearson, and I am substituting.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Okay, agenda item 2, which is the draft minutes of the previous meeting. I'd like to propose them as a true and correct record of the previous meeting. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Wilkinson, thank you. It's very strange here today because the seats are a bit higher and it's sometimes a bit hard to see people. So, Councillor Wilkinson, thank you. Do we have any comments on the draft minutes of the previous meeting? Okay, so we're going to move to the vote. All those in favour in accepting the minutes? Thank you. Any against? And any abstentions? Thank you. That's carried. Okay, agenda item 3. Declaration of interest, either pecuniary or non-pecuniary. Do we have any declarations of interest? Thank you. Councillor David Ellis.
Thank you, Chair. In addition to the general declaration of interest for all of us on item 6, which is a Borough Council application, I've got a specific non-pecuniary interest as it's my portfolio. So I'll be taking no part in the discussion or the vote.
Thank you. Yep. So agenda item 6 is an application by Gedling Borough, and it's on Gedling Borough land. Thank you. Item 4, which is land at 2 Sanford Road, Mapley. We have one speaker, Nicholas Bowes, who's a resident objector. Mr. Bowes, if you'd like to move towards the lectern. You have 3 minutes to speak, and I will stop you when your 3 minutes is up, if you'd like to speak.
Okay, thank you. I'm here to object to the plans because of the lack of parking. We know that when the original plans were submitted, there was on-site parking with 13 spaces with the proposed access from Sanford Road. This also included parking on additional parking on Porchester Road. The gradient was too steep and access wasn't granted. This must have been a major setback for the developer, but the plans submitted now seem more like an afterthought and more about making the best of a bad job. Without the car park, there is now a limit of 11 off-road parking spaces from Porchester Road. Not only that, but there is the challenge of drivers having to reverse in and out from a busy Porchester Road. Consequently, it is more than likely that they will resort to parking up on pavement further down the road. I'll come back to why this is a problem. So there are 11 spaces for 13 apartments. It is quite likely that these will be double occupancy with 2 cars, a great possibility. That's a potential 26 cars. Again, with these plans only providing 11 spaces, where are they going to park? Sanford and Hilton Road are already congested with residents parking. Even if we're generous and say that there are only around 6 out of the 13 apartments which will have double occupancy with 2 vehicles and the rest 1 vehicle, that still means that there's a shortfall of 8 spaces. So again, the most likely area to park is on the pavement, further on down in front of 304A Porchester Road, just before the junction of Hilton Road. Incidentally, that part of the road only has about 6, maximum 7 spaces for cars. Parked cars will cause the usual difficulties for pedestrians, particularly for those with pushchairs and mobility scooters. More significantly, it will be a real hazard for motorists. Whenever there are cars parked on Porchester Road near the junction of Hilton Road, it creates a blind spot. It is simply impossible to see cars coming down the road. It's not just possible, it is inevitable that this parking will become a problem. Therefore, I ask you to seriously consider this objection, because it should be a requirement of a development like this to have an on-site car park so that it benefits the surrounding community rather than causing it a burden and even a hazard. Finally, it is possible for any future development to have a proper car park, as can be seen in the previous plans that this council has approved for this site, which was granted access from Porchester Road. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bowes. Okay, I would like to propose agenda item 4 for the purpose of debate. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Wilkinson, thank you. Thank you. Does anyone want to speak?
Oh, we need to hear the reply.
I've got ahead of myself here. Sorry about that, everybody. We'll have an officer, Craig Miles, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. The application site is located within the built-up area of Mapperley on the corner of Sandford Road and Porchester Road. The site comprises of a vacant parcel of land that was previously associated with a detached dwelling there, Chair, that formed 2 Sandford Road. That's since been demolished and the site cleared. Just an aerial image there and some images of the site. The topography of the site is an important consideration of this application. The land towards the northern boundary, Sandford Road, and the western boundary, Porchester Road, is significantly higher than the remainder of the site. And you could see that in that left-hand side picture there. The neighbouring properties are residential and comprise a mix of sizes and designs, including bungalows, masonettes and 2-storey dwellings. The land on the opposite side of Porchester Road is located within an administrative area of Nottingham City Council and consists of Mapperley Porchester Hospital, and which is a listed building, and around it is a conservation area. There's a row of mature trees along the frontage with Porchester Road which are protected by a tree preservation order at present. Important to consider the planning history of the site. Planning permission has been granted twice in the past for the erection of 10 dwellings on the site, one in 2014 and again in 2017. Those permissions have now lapsed. In terms of what's proposed in this instance, it's a full application for the development of 1 2-bedroom dwelling and 13 apartments. The 13 apartments will be housed within one building. The apartment block would have 3 floors, but from Porchester Road, only the top floor is visible. I'll just show you some elevations. That's elevation from Porchester Road, and that's elevation from Sandford Road, in the corner there. 11 off-street car parking spaces are proposed to the front of the apartment block, and that'd be accessed directly from Porchester Road. It's also proposed to fell the sycamore trees at the site and replant replacement trees in a similar location. Now, in addition to that, the applicants agreed a Section 106 agreement through heads of terms to secure first homes in the form of affordable housing. There'll be 2 flats, as well as a contribution for bus stop improvements and a local labour agreement. If we just move on to the planning merits of what's proposed. In terms of the principle of development, that's already accepted. There's a presumption in favour of development within urban areas subject to certain design criteria being met. In terms of the design and layout, the character of the area is a mix of residential properties of different ages, styles and designs. It consists of bungalows, traditional 2-storey, 2.5-storey dwellings, masonettes and apartment blocks. Due to the level of the area, change in levels, there's a number of dwellings are split level. The proposed design and layout of the proposed dwellings would appear a single-storey in public view from Porchester Road and Sandford Road. In terms of scale, we think this would be in keeping with the wider area. Don't think. To show the rear elevation. From within the site, the apartment building would appear as a 3-storey building, as land levels fall steeply away from the roadside boundaries. We think this is in keeping with a number of buildings in the immediate area, which also appear as 3 storeys when viewed from the rear. The primary elevations would face the public highway and be broken up visually in the form of windows and doors, and there would be a large pitched roof entrance on Porchester Road. This would be in keeping with neighbouring properties in terms of proportions, and it's considered to fit in well with the street scene of in regard to the scale and form of other dwellings in the vicinity. In terms of the impact on heritage assets, I mentioned that on the opposite side of the road there's a conservation and listed building. We've consulted with Nottingham City Council and our own conservation officer, and neither of them object to the application on heritage grounds. As such, it's considered that the proposal would not harm the setting of any heritage assets. In terms of amenity, the proposal is not considered to cause any acceptable issues of massing, overshadowing, overbearing, or overlooking into neighbouring properties. This is primarily due to the layout and separation distance between the proposed building and the existing properties, and the location of windows on the proposed buildings. The majority of the rear windows look over the property's own communal gardens, which is some 20 metres in depth. Similarly, the dwelling on the corner of the site is broadly in line with number 4 Sanford Road. That again would not lead to any overlooking or overshadowing, particularly as there's no windows in the side elevation. Excuse me. In terms of the impact on trees, you should know that when planning permission was granted twice previously, it was accepted that the trees along the frontage of Porchester Road would be removed by the tree officer, and that was subject to condition. The applicant submitted a tree assessment that's been assessed by our tree officer, and he's happy with everything in it, and subject to condition, he's satisfied that the location of the replacement trees along the frontage of Porchester Road and to the rear within the garden ground is acceptable and can be controlled by condition. We move on to access and parking. The proposals include 11 car parking spaces to the front of the apartment block and to the side of the proposed dwelling. They would be accessed directly from Porchester Road. 2 of the spaces are allocated to serve the proposed dwelling, and 9 of the spaces would be proposed to serve the apartment building. Assessing the proposals against the Council's car parking SPD would mean that 13 spaces should be provided. But as mentioned previously at other committees, the SPD also states that if the development is served by one or more regular public transport service, that this is a material consideration justifying a reduced parking provision requirement, especially if the site is located within or close to a central area. Sorry, to get a drink of water. It's too hot in here for a change, not used to it. It's considered that there is very limited options to provide any further on-site space than what is proposed at present. The site is located in a highly sustainable location within walking distance of Mapperley Local Centre and close to a number of bus routes to Nottingham City Centre. To help mitigate the reduction in the parking requirement, 4 cycle spaces are also provided to serve the proposed development. At officer level, we consider the apartment block could be occupied in this location without relying on a private car. It should be noted that the Highway Authority have been consulted and do not object to the application. And in these circumstances, we consider it complies with SPD and our development plan. Just 2 points left. 1, flooding and drainage. A lot of the representations made against development are in relation to flooding and drainage, Though the site's located in flood zone 1, therefore of a low risk of flooding, the Environment Agency have been consulted on the application but have raised no objections. The applicant has submitted a drainage assessment and indicative drainage plans which show most of the site can be dealt with via soakaways for surface water, but some parts may be limited due to impervious ground conditions. This requires further assessment, but the indicative plan show pumping surface water to the primary outfall or culverted watercourse to the east of the site. Now, we've consulted with the Flood Authority, who do not object to these indicative proposals, but requested a condition to state that more technical information is required by condition, and that's in the list of conditions there. In terms of foul drainage, that would be dealt with through the building regulations process. I think it's condition number 13. Subject to this condition, there'd be no issues in relation to flood risk or drainage in the area. Finally, in conclusion, the proposal was consistent with local and national planning policies. The principle of development is acceptable in this urban area. The design, scale and layout of the proposal is considered to be acceptable and does not have an unacceptable impact on the character or visual amenity of the area or the setting of any heritage assets. The replacement trees planting location is considered acceptable. The proposal would not have an unacceptable impact on neighbouring existing residents in terms of overlooking or overshadowing. We consider the parking access as acceptable and the proposal does not increase flood risk in the area. Chairman, the recommendation is to grant planning permission subject to the conditions outlined in the report and of course the owner entering into a Section 106 agreement with this authority to secure the planning obligations. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Craig. Item 4 has been proposed and seconded, so does anybody want to speak? Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Chair. Anybody who's familiar with the very sad history of this site will welcome the fact that we have plans in front of us, but we have had false storms before. You know, we've at least 2 applications that have been proposed and not being built. So let's hope that this time something is built. I think overall, I think it's a good scheme. I like it. I like how it is visually. I do have some sympathy with the concerns about the parking, in particular the access from Porchester Road. Again, anyone familiar with that location will understand that. But the issue we have is that the Highways Authority have not raised any objections, and that would make it very, very difficult for us to refuse the application on those grounds. So therefore, on balance, I am minded to support this application.
Thank you. Councillor Beswick.
Thank you, Chair. Where is he? Craig. Just a couple of questions, if I may. Am I right to say that planning permission was originally granted before, that's now lapsed for 10 dwellings, and now it's gone up to 13? That's right, isn't it?
Hi, Councillor. Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
It's been granted twice.
And on those applications where there was 10 dwellings, would it be that there was sufficient car parking to meet the SPD? Or don't you know that?
I think that predates the SPD, doesn't it? Because it was
okay.
SPD was 2022. That was way back in 2014 and 2017.
But now, according to the notes, the proposal put forward is 2 car parking spaces short of what we would normally recommend on the SPD. That's correct, isn't it?
The starting point is 2 spaces short, subject to the paragraph that you have to consider the location of the premises.
And understand
that. Councillor Beswick, if you could ask the questions through me as chair.
Sorry. Yeah, of course. So The last point really is, were there any discussions between the applicant and the officer regarding why it was increased from 10 dwellings to 13, and if it would have been better suited with fewer dwellings to meet the car parking requirements?
I don't think this is material to this to making the decision on this item.
Well, it just what weight was given to the need for car parking spaces is what I'm trying to ascertain.
Thank you, Councillor Bestwick. So the application would have been submitted. So it was an application that was submitted for 1 dwelling and 13 apartments, so a total of 14 units. So that application has to be considered on the basis of its merits, having regard to the policies which were in force at the time. There has been significant discussions between the case officer and the applicant to try and address issues in relation to the application, and there's some narrative in terms of those specific discussions in the report. There wouldn't have been a request from the planning officer to revert back to a scheme that had previously been consented, but there has been significant dialogue following the submission of the application, and details of that dialogue are included in the report.
A standalone application, and no reference would have been made to the previous ones. That would be normal, would it?
It would. The applicant may well have been aware of the previous consents, but the discussions would have focused around the existing policies that we have. So the line core strategy, the local planning document, the car parking SPD, and the other policies which are detailed in the report. They would have formed the basis of the discussion, rather than permissions that were granted prior to the existing policies being in effect.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any more comments at all? Councillor Graham-Pope.
Thank you. Just for a point of clarity, this application you've presented is for number 2 Sandford Road. On the papers we were, sorry, Chair, on the papers we were provided, the diagram suggests number 6 Sandford Road is also included in the development. Is that just an error, or?
No. I could answer that, Chair, if that's okay. The applicant also owns number 6, but the application address is number 2, because that was the dwelling that occupied the house that's since been demolished. But the red line boundary also includes number 6, because that's also owned by the applicant.
But there's no application at this time for that to be developed?
Yep, there's no proposals for number 6.
Okay, thank you.
So I think to try and add some clarity and to clear up this situation, the plan that is attached to your report, 6, shouldn't actually have been included. So that was an outdated plan. So the development proposed is detailed on the monitor in front of you, and that does not include number 6.
Any more questions? Sorry, have I missed somebody at all? No.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, Councillor Pope asked the question I was going to ask, so I've got the answer to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Elwood. So I can't see any more councillors indicating. Shall we move to the vote? The recommendation is to grant permission. All those in favour? All those against? Thank you. That is carried. So we'll move on to agenda item 5, 3 Flats Lane. There are no speakers on this item, and Craig will introduce it. Thank you.
So if I turn the mic on. Thank you, Chairman. The application site relates to premises on the west side of Flats Lane, Calverton. At present, comprises a retail premises with a single 5-bedroom apartment above. Oh, sorry, I've got some pictures here. Here we go. That gives a better idea of what we're considering. There's a service area to the rear, but the applicant confirms that this is not used to service the shop, as they're relying cash and carry trips rather than deliveries to the premises. Other properties within that parade do get deliveries, but it's to the front of the premises, and as you could see in that picture, there's a delivery van making a delivery there. That is, of course, except the co-op, who have its own dedicated delivery service, servicing area to the rear of their premises. Oops. Right, so what we're dealing with an application that wants to subdivide the first floor of the premises and build a dwelling to the rear of it. Now, the dwelling to the rear of it would be, in essence, a first floor extension above the very end of the existing premises towards that back service road. And beyond it, there'd be car parking for 4 car parking spaces. So in essence, the proposal is to subdivide the existing flat to create 2 flats and erect a first floor extension at the very end of the flat roof building to create a dwelling. Now, in terms of consultation responses, the Highway Authority do not object to the proposals, subject to conditions to ensure the car parking area is provided. There are no issues relating to neighbouring amenity. The dwelling apartments would be of sufficient size for future residents. It's considered that the first floor extension would be appropriate size and scale and would be in keeping with the character of the area. It's also considered that the proposals would comply with the development plan, and there are no other relevant material considerations that would indicate anything other than a recommendation to approve planning permission. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Craig. I'd like to propose item 5 for the purpose of debate. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Wilkinson. Thank you. Okay. Are there any speakers on this item? Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, I know this site really well. I am a bit worried because that road is a service road, and when the co-op van delivers, he doesn't go onto the land of the co-op. He always leaves his van on the service road because he can't. It's huge, so it is really tight round the back, which I know you know, and I'm a bit worried about the parking. But I know Highways have said that they feel it's adequate. So it's still a worry for me, and I just think the problem is round the front, there's a lay-by for cars. That bit there where that van is, that's actually double yellows and you shouldn't park there, but people do. On the other side is a lay-by and there's about 6 cars. Round the other side is Collier Road, which is really busy, and then the other road is Pepper Road, which is really tight for parking. So I'm just worried how many cars and where they're going to park. But other than that, I'm not against it. It is the parking I'm worried about. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Walker. Councillor David Ellis.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Walker has expressed the concerns the delegation panel had, which is why we asked it to be referred here. Predominantly the effect of converting what looks to us to be a store at the rear of the shop. However, I noticed in paragraph 6.11, the officers have picked up our concerns and have confirmation from the applicants that isn't used for deliveries. So I think, in my mind, that's assuaged our concerns. So I think I'll be supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else want to speak on this item? No. Okay, so we'll move to the vote. The recommendation is to grant permission. All those in favour, please raise their hands. Okay, anyone against? And are there any abstentions? Okay, thank you, that was carried. So we'll move on to agenda item 6, and this will be introduced by Craig.
Thank you, Chair. This is an application by Gedling Borough Council for the installation of a pole-mounted CCTV camera on land alongside the car park associated with Church Lane recreational ground. The CCTV pole and camera itself would be 12...
Sorry, Craig. Sorry, Councillor. We can hear you talking from the front. Thank you.
Okay, Chair. The CCTV camera would be 12 metres high in total, comprising a steel column CCTV camera antenna. And the application has been amended to take account of the setting of the adjacent St Mary's Church, which is a Grade 2 star listed building. So it's been pushed back there in the car park to the far side. There's been no public comment made and no objection from any consultees. The design and positioning is considered acceptable, and therefore the recommendation, Chair, is to approve planning permission. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to propose item 6 for the purpose of debate. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Rachel Ellis, thank you. Are there any speakers on this item? No. Thank you. Shall we move to the vote then? All those in favour? Thank you. Anyone against? And any abstentions? Thank you, that's carried. So we'll move to agenda item 7, which is 10 Neville Road, Calverton, and it will be introduced by Craig.
Thank you, Chair. An application made by a member of staff here at Gedling Borough Council, and that's the sole reason why it's at Planning Committee. The proposal relates to a simple household extension and comprises of a single-storey front extension. These are existing plans to tie into the existing porch. Just look at the front elevation, top left. And also a single-storey rear extension that would tie into the existing conservatory. That's the top right in elevation form. There's been no public comment. We're perfectly happy with the design, in accordance with our policies and guidance. There'll be no issues of any overlooking or overshadowing, etc. Therefore, the recommendation, Chairman, is to approve planning permission. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to propose item 7 for the purpose of debate. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Walker, thank you. Are there any comments on this item? Okay, shall we move to the vote? All those in favour? Thank you. That was unanimous. That is carried. So we'll move to agenda item 8, which is for noting, which is the appeal of Beacon Baptist decision. Any comments at all? Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you, Chair. There's no doubt in my mind, obviously, that this building needs to be demolished, but the only contention is what replaces it once it's been demolished. It needs to go, obviously, because of the state of it. It's dilapidated and it's been the subject of vandalism. However, I would note that in 2021, the site was designated a site of community interest. So it is my view that the Baptist Union have not done enough work in terms of promoting it as a community asset. There used to be a lot of activities that used to happen at that building before it obviously closed. Also, I feel that the inspector obviously does not understand the needs of the Killissock community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wheeler. Any other comments on this item? Are we happy to note it? Yeah, thank you. So move on to item 9, which is the appeal of 9 Marlborough Road, Woodthorpe. Any comments on this item? I can't see any. Are we happy to note this item? Yes, thank you. So item 10, appeal at 91 Main Street, Burton Joyce. Any comments on this item? No, thank you. Are we happy to note it? Yeah. Item 11, which is another appeal, 164 Longdale Lane, Ramshead. Any comments on this item? No, happy to note. Thank you. And item 12, appeal at Old Manor Farm, Loudham Lane. Any comments on this item? Happy to note. Thank you. So move on to agenda item 13, which is future applications. Any comments on this item? So we're happy to note this one. Thank you. Now agenda item 14, the planning delegation action sheets. Any comments on those? No? Are we happy to note that? Thank you. I have no urgent business, so I'd like to close the meeting. Oh, Councillor Smith, Sam Smith.
Thank you, Chairman. If I could just ask for an update on when you plan to hold the review of planning protocol. I think we spoke about it at full council recently. I just wondered if you had plans to hold that soon.
1 second, I'll be with you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Smith. So there'll be an email going out to the members who are on the working group. That email will go out next week, and we will arrange the first meeting.
Thank you, everybody. Just remind you there's a briefing after the meeting, and thanks for your time.